to talk to us about from conception to delivery, establishing a pro-life practice. Tim von Dohlen is a lifelong resident of historic Goliad, Texas. His family settled in South Texas in the mid-1800s. Mr. von Dohlen is a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin with degrees in pharmacy and law. His current business includes an investment group with a focus on healthcare and developing new nursing homes. He is the co-owner of Goliad Pharmacy, the second oldest continuously operating pharmacy in the state of Texas. Mr. von Dohlen was an active leader in sponsoring pro-life legislation during 7 terms as a member of the Texas House of Representatives. He and his wife Pat are founders and board members of the John Paul II Life Center, which has a vision of building a culture of life in Central Texas. The center promotes the beliefs of the Catholic faith through medical care, education, spiritual growth programs, and pro-life activities. Please join me in welcoming Tim von Dohlen.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thank you for that kind introduction. It's always nice to have a good introduction. I kind of remember when I was still in the legislature, I was introduced one day by a political foe, and she said, well, Mr. von Dohlen is a model legislator, and went on. And afterwards I told her, I said, well, I didn't know you felt that way about me. She said, oh, you didn't? Well, you might want to go check Webster's. So that night I went home and I looked in Webster's, and Webster's defines model as a small imitation of the real thing. So when you have a good one, you better take it. And today we're going to focus on model from a different perspective, and that is to plan or form a pattern, and also to make into an organization, such as an army. So my hope is that you here will learn of our model as possibly the answer to something that has originated in your mind, and will give you the plan to make it into an organization. Our hope is to truly create an army for this model across the United States, not just in Central Texas. And so that's what we're going to talk about, is how we put this together in the past 5 years. I have to say it's truly an honor to be here today, because many of the speakers, I feel honored just to be included here, much less to be speaking, because they truly are the foundation of and pioneers in the pro-life movement. Sister, I have to tell you that Nebraska, Michigan, and Texas come to mind today, because Jeff Fortenberry, as each of you heard, and Pat and I got to see, is an incredible individual, and he is so committed to his Catholic faith, but he's committed to doing the very best that we can for this country. And so that was great. And to be able to be with Sister and hear about NFP and the continuing work of Tom and Sue Hilders it's a marvel, and it's something that everyone needs to become familiar with and help spread the word about. My speech title today is a little bit of a play on words, because when we define conception, that's generally the act of becoming pregnant, whereas the conception that we're talking about today is the originating of something in your mind and carrying that concept forward to delivery, the opening of a pro-life practice. I want you to know that Pat and I recently returned from a trip to the Holy Land. And it was on a pilgrimage with a Michiganite, Steve and Karen Ray. Steve is a great ambassador for Michigan and a great biblical scholar. We also were pleased just this week to be with another person from Michigan in Florida, and that was Tom Monahan at Ave Maria University. Tom, we thought, might actually be able to join us today, but he was unable to. But what a great individual he is, and a great pro-life champion. I want to just focus for just a minute on Pope Paul VI and his encyclical Humanae Vitae. You know, it was given on the 25th of July 1968, 43 years ago. He gave certain admonitions, and I just want to call to mind just one of them, and that was artificial birth control in the hands of public authorities who take no heed of moral exigencies and use them as dangerous weapons. That was one of his forecasts, one of his admonitions that could happen. And we're going to look for just a minute at what in fact has happened. Pat and I were in Colorado not too long ago, and we happened to watch on TV one day, just to turn the TV on, just happened to be Hillary Clinton making her speech on the Global Health Initiative. And while I'm sure that the $63 billion that the U.S. is committing to foreign countries will help in some good ways, I want you to listen to just a little bit about what she said, and I quote, "And we are raising our goal for prevention. Through the Global Health Initiative, we aim to prevent 12 million new HIV infections. To do that, we're embracing a more comprehensive approach and expanding on what we know works. We're moving beyond ABC, abstinence, be faithful and consistent and correct use of condoms, to an A to Z approach to prevention. It also requires increased access to family planning. The United States was once at the forefront in developing and delivering successful family planning programs, but in recent years we've fallen behind. With the Global Health Initiative, we're making up for lost time." So do you hear what she's saying? This administration has done away with the Mexico City Accord, which assured that U.S. tax dollars would not be spent for abortions around the world. Now we're making up for lost time, and we'll be able to pay for abortions as the way the United States will help women in foreign countries. I also was interested in reading some of Mike O'Day's comments that he made recently to a federal agency when he pointed out that right now that there are agencies of the United States government that are having hearings to propose offering free confidential contraception and abortion for any woman beyond the age of puberty, with that to be paid for by the United States government and to be given free of charge to anyone who requests it. These are the kinds of examples that bring into play what Paul VI spoke of in his admonitions and warnings. So I just took the opportunity to summarize very briefly, if I could, taking his admonitions, these two examples of what's going on, and we might say that this is what's happening in this country. A man, by encouraging the use of oral contraceptives, has lost respect for his wife, or live-in woman, and uses her as a mere instrument of selfish enjoyment. Artificial birth control in the hands of the United States government is using abortion and oral contraceptives in foreign countries as the tool to get those foreign governments to accept so-called family planning, or there will be no other U.S. financial aid. Thus, the foreign leader, even if opposed to abortion, will impose abortion on his people to get U.S. dollars. The morality of the people in the United States has been degraded, and the United States government permits now, by so-called legal means, practices contrary to the natural law, which are destroying the fundamental cell of our society, the family. So what are the answers to this? Well, the answers are to follow the truth of Humana Vitae, to learn and follow the ethical and religious directives for Catholic health care facilities, and to learn and follow the theology of the body written by Pope John Paul II. We are applying these in the John Paul II Life Center and Vitae Clinic in Austin, Texas. It's interesting that so many of us here today are quoting Thomas Jefferson, and I want to do the same. And Thomas Jefferson said, "The care of human life, and not its destruction, is the first and only legitimate object of good government." And you might be interested, about the same time he made that statement, there was, does anyone know who it was that declared that the United States Capitol could be a church? It was Thomas Jefferson. And he happened to do that the day after the letter that was written to the Baptists in New York that is held up as the position for the separation of church and state. And the very next day, he designated the United States Capitol as a church and attended church there for the rest of his presidency. Well, that brings us to Austin, Texas, and what's happening there. And we have just spent a 5-year journey. A 5-year journey to create a pro-life crisis pregnancy center and an OB-GYN practice. And it was fraught with opportunity, with excitement, with emotion, with the unexpected. Just about the time that Pope John Paul II passed away, we were in the middle of considering what we should do in Austin. And with his death, it energized us to think that we should utilize his great example here on earth and to open a center in his name. And it was just about 17 days after his death that my wife at that time, Sherry, went into a coma and some days later passed away. And it was only 4 months after that that I met Pat, and 4 months after that that we married. And this had a real impact because you can imagine the trauma that we go through in family situations. And it was really the recognition that Pat gave me as she went through our RCIA and became Catholic, and as I realized how great it was that she knew how to talk to God as a Protestant, probably better than I did as a Catholic. But she became Catholic, and we were married, and what she did was really to re-energize me to go on to do what we did here. And I'd just like to ask Pat if she would to stand up. We decided that whatever we were going to do as we went forward in life, we were going to do together. And so we truly have worked together on this for the next 5 years that it took to accomplish this. And so we actually incorporated on April the 2nd, 2007, 2 years to the day after Pope John Paul II passed away. We filed for 501c3 status and obtained that tax exemption and approval from the IRS. We wanted to have both a crisis pregnancy center and OB-GYN center with sonogram capacity. We had regular meetings with the diocesan staff, the bishop, and local Catholic hospital leadership. We established a mission, vision, and goal, and took lots of work, lots of time during this to accomplish it. So what I want to do now is to give you some of the detail that we did in fashioning this, because there were so many obstacles that we ran into, and hopefully what we can do is help you prevent that. How many of you are part of an OB-GYN practice that you utilize NFP care? A few of you. How many of you are thinking about the possibility of creating a center that would involve an OB-GYN practice or creating a crisis pregnancy center? So a few in here. Okay, well then I may bore you with a little bit of detail, but I think this is important, and hopefully, as with the conscience clause matter, you can pass this on to other people. The process that we employed was first of all to find 3 couples. We wanted to find a few more, but when we got to 3 that were each committed $100,000 over a 5-year period, we knew we had the financial wherewithal to go on and make it happen. And so we started. And we developed a mission statement, and our mission for the John Paul II Life Center is to help build a culture of life structured around the beliefs of the Catholic faith through pro-life medical care supported by education and spiritual growth programs. Our vision is to successfully operate a pro-life medical clinic that provides wellness, prenatal, delivery, and postnatal care for women, expectant mothers, and babies. 2, to work with medical centers to foster establishment of other pro-life entities. And 3, to help build a culture of life. Our goals, and these are goals both for the John Paul II Life Center and the Vitae Clinic, are interrelated, but I want to share these together. First, to operate and manage a medical clinic directed by a physician, an OB-GYN, as the medical director, which offers medical care in accord with the teachings of the Catholic Church in conformity with the ethical and religious directives for Catholic healthcare services for all women who seek these services based on a financial model that anticipates 70% private pay or insurance portion and 30% underinsured or indigent, but which operates at least at a break-even level. 2, to integrate crisis pregnancy counseling for women in need of this counseling, delivered in a manner that recognizes the primary focus of clinic medical care with the capacity for counseling determined in consultation with the medical director of the clinic and the center. 3rd, to operate a sonogram center, which will serve the patients of the medical clinic and be available through a separate entrance to women in crisis pregnancy situations referred through various sources, including the Catholic parishes in the Austin area, the Gabriel Center, and other crisis pregnancy centers. Women who cannot pay for the sonogram will be assisted to the extent funds are available from the Save the Baby Sonogram Fund in order for the sonogram center to recover its costs. 4, to offer education for married couples on natural family planning, including the Creighton, Billings, and couple-to-couple methods, and to have the physicians trained in naphrotechnology in order to offer ways for a woman to overcome infertility problems and to conceive without utilizing in vitro fertilization. And you've just heard how that works. And number 5, to create a loving and respectful clinic and center environment that supports and enhances the dignity of the woman and her unborn or born child in an atmosphere that is calming and spiritually uplifting, including a chapel or meditation room for patients, employees, and others visiting the center. 6, to assure that all employees and volunteers of the center and clinic understand the vision, mission, and goals of the center and clinic, and that each person signs a statement expressing their understanding, and that such person will follow the ethical and religious directives for Catholic healthcare services. And finally, 7, to arrange for prominent speakers and offer seminars to make presentations on matters relating to the goals of the center and clinic as a means of educating and enlightening men and women. So that's a lot of lengthy goals, but and they incorporate experiences that we had as we went along that we felt like were important to have within them. We developed a series of responsibilities for board members. I'm not going to list those. What I'm going to do is, for anybody who is interested in having the details of this, you just give me a card after the presentation. I'll be glad to send you the full text of this so we can give you the detail. I'm just going to try to hit the high points here. And then the organizational structure, in Texas, you can't just hire a physician. If we need a physician, either the physician opens their own clinic, or you have to create what they call a Texas healthcare not-for-profit healthcare organization. And that's controlled by the State Board of Medical Examiners, and all the members of that board have to be physicians. We then were able to find the minimum number, which was 3, that would essentially allow us the freedom to go forward and create this. We did that for them. They allowed us to, the graciousness, because their license is on the line, to go forward and put everything together, and it all worked. But in the process of that, the board of the John Paul II Life Center, and therefore the center itself, becomes the manager of the physician clinic, and which was a very important element for us. We felt like that the criteria for board membership of the John Paul II Life Center, which incorporates the Vitae clinic, was critical. And our criteria were: 1, to be a practical, that is, practicing Catholic in union with the Holy See. This means that he or she accepts the teaching authority of the Catholic Church on matters of faith and morals, aspires to live in accord with the precepts of the Catholic Church, and is in good standing with the Catholic Church. 2, is committed to using, or if beyond childbearing age, be committed to supporting and advocating natural family planning. 3, be familiar with all 3 methods of NFP, within 6 months after commencement of board membership, start within 1 year complete, or listen to the Catholic Diocese of Austin NFP introductory course on the theology of the body, or equivalent courses, a minimum of 10 hours. 4, to be a promoter of NFP to family, friends, and associates, and when appropriate, to always use enthusiasm and without reservation. And 5, be a financial supporter of the John Paul II Life Center by contributing or raising a minimum of $10,000 a year. We then have a series of responsibilities for the board of directors, and again, I won't go into those at this time. I think it's really important to share with you a little bit of the difficulties that we experienced and the hardships and challenges that we experienced during our formation. Establishing your mission, vision, and goals, it's essential that the board members and all consultants or employees are on the same page, no separate agendas, and each person has an understanding of those goals. 2, finding the correct physician, whether that should be a family practice physician or an OB-GYN, and to use the One More Soul website. So Steve, we owe you a great deal of appreciation for helping us find our physician. 3, getting a hospital to embrace your mission. This is an absolutely critical element, and I'll go in a little bit more detail of that here in a minute, but initially we thought the hospital could serve as an incubator for us and would employ the physician and would let them essentially work for us. We found that we were really expecting too much to do that, but when we found our physician, they interviewed him, saw that he had great potential, and we were actually able to work out a recruitment agreement, which was a tremendous help financially to making this a viable entity. The next thing was getting agreement of the bishop. While we were, and the question is, are you part of or are you outside the diocese? And we had significant cooperation from the prior bishop in Austin, and the current bishop is just really on board with what is going on. So creating the proper relationship with the hospital, creating the proper relationship with the diocese is essential. And then finding a building that you could lease, the space you want, and the proper location. And back here on the back table, you'll find the John Paul II Life Center format. And it lays out our 3,350 square feet of space and the square footage which is shared between the John Paul II Life Center and the Vitae Clinic all under one roof. And then, of course, when can you start raising money? And it's one thing to say you're going to do something. It's another thing for people to know that you've actually started. And so it was a chicken and an egg situation for a good part of our time. And we really didn't feel like until we had a signed contract with a physician that we were in a position to actually start raising money from third parties. And that's essentially what we did. So let's take just a few minutes here to take a look specifically at the formation, and I'm going to focus, because we have a number of physicians, on the physician aspect of the practice, not the crisis pregnancy center. But we'll talk just briefly about that. But from the physician practice side, what is essential is to create the appropriate legal structure. So to form a state nonprofit corporation, get your 501c3 designation. Now, the physician may choose that they want to be a for-profit entity, and that's fine. You also can be a not-for-profit entity, and which is the route that we've decided to go and have obtained both the 501c3 designation for the John Paul II Life Center and also for the OB-GYN practice, the Vitae Clinic. I already discussed with you forming the entity that was necessary in order to be able to actually hire the physician. And I also was discussing with you how important it was that you have an initial board of directors that will make a substantial financial commitment in order to make that physician practice work. From a financial standpoint, if you do not have a foundational base of funds at least $250,000, it's going to be extremely difficult to both get the loans that you need and be able to move forward. Identify your physician. OB-GYN, our family practice specialist. What we found was that definitely the OB-GYN specialist is preferable. And the reason is that the family practice specialist, as much as we want to work with them and encourage that, It requires a different hospital certification requirement, and there are different reimbursement rates, as you know. And so that creates issues, and in most instances, a family practice specialist, even if they've had a special course in OB-GYN, are going to require an additional year of training at the hospital before they're accepted onto the staff of the hospital. I've already mentioned that they need to be committed to NFP and to all three methods. The methods should compete with one another. The billings, the couple-to-couple, and the Creighton models all are important. The physician needs to be trained or will agree to be trained in NAPRO technology and in order to assist a woman to achieve pregnancy without using IVF. Creating the Sonogram Center was absolutely essential. And we looked at various sources for matching funds. The primary source that we found were the Knights of Columbus. And essentially, if you raise 50% of the money, they'll provide a 50% grant. You need to do the proper due diligence on the system to be obtained. And we utilize this both in our physician practice and in the Crisis Pregnancy Center. We created a Save the Baby Sonogram Fund, and contributions can go into that, and if a woman's unable to pay for a sonogram, we provide it for her, and because there's a cost of essentially $400 per sonogram, and the cost actually depends upon where she is in her stage of pregnancy. And this probably is one of the most essential elements, to engage a practice management group to assist in the physician clinic practice for startup. This entity, we use the Texas Medical Association's practice management group, and they were absolutely wonderful. They establish about 50 clinics a year across Texas, and so they have various professionals that are required to assist you, and that would include financial institution contacts, insurance company contacts, credentialing sources. In that regard, it's essential that you understand how difficult credentialing is, because you can get your hospital credentialing even before licensure in your state, but you can't get your third-party credentialing. And so you can't start that until you've actually opened the doors of your practice. So being able to do that is very essential. Your technology specialist, we actually started out paperless. We're electronic medical record from the get-go, and that's really assisting. You need a real estate specialist, a legal specialist. You need to work on your policies and procedures. You need an accounting specialist, and a number of other things that I'm not going to take the time to go into here. But again, if you're interested in the details of it, I'll be more than glad to share it. There are a whole series of questions that you need to consider in opening an OB-GYN practice with a Crisis Pregnancy Center and Sonogram Center. And I've outlined these in detail, and again, I'm not going to, because of the time constraints, go into that, but those are available. And I think it's essential that we look at the big picture overall where Catholic pro-life efforts are. And I've tried to outline those also in my presentation, and they're there for your perusal. So if we look at the big picture, our overall objectives, that we begin to see the clarity and magnitude of the pro-life effort. Some of those matters are theoretical, some are practical, but all are important. And the missing link to truly having success in helping a woman save one child, to save thousands of children, to return dignity to marriage and the family, and establish a culture of life, is by establishing physician practices in conjunction with Crisis Pregnancy Center, sonogram centers across the United States. And we think that those that follow the model of the John Paul II Life Center and Vitae Clinic are the way to go. And so, again, I want to mention to you to look at the way we're established back there on the table, to give me your card if you'd like to have this presentation in more detail. And I want to close with a statement from the Word for Today that's actually written by a Baptist minister, Bob Gass. And this little story of his was as follows. Elijah said to his servant, "Go up now, look toward the sea." So he went up and looked and said, "There's nothing." 7 times Elijah said, "Go again." The 7th time the servant said, "There is a cloud, as small as a man's hand, rising out of the sea." So Elijah said, "Go up, say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." That's from 1 Kings. Notice 4 things in this story. Number 1, you must look to God for your answer, not people. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord. He will be like a tree planted by the water and sends out its roots by the stream. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. Jeremiah 17. 2, you must keep believing what God says. Elijah kept getting the same negative report. There is nothing. But he kept believing God until finally the 7th time his servant said, "There's a cloud, as small as a man's hand, rising out of the sea." God had promised it was coming, so he stood on God's word. 3, you must not be influenced by those who don't share your vision. Elijah's servant kept saying nothing is happening, but Elijah knew better. You can't be led by those who aren't in sync with you spiritually. 4, you must position yourself to receive. He put his face between his knees, 1 Kings. That's the birthing position. Today, what you sense within you is real, but if you don't get into position and push, it won't happen. If you do, God will bless you with abundance, 1 Kings. So every success story begins with somebody taking a small step or sowing a small seed, which usually represents all they have at the moment. Simply stated, everything big starts with something small. If you're not willing to start small, you can't start at all. The servant who kept telling Elijah nothing was happening finally saw something. It was just a tiny cloud, but it had great potential. God loves to use things we think are insignificant. He used a little boy's lunch to feed a multitude, a slingshot to bring down a giant, and a handful of clay to restore a blind man's eyesight. He can use a little job, a little money, or a little idea to bless you. Little clouds are indicators of what's coming. They're conduits God has chosen to use. When God promises you something, He doesn't need anything big to make it happen. Often the change that impacts many starts with one individual. Whether it's an Esther, or a Paul, or a Mother Teresa, or a Billy Graham, God only needs one person who believes Him and dares to step out on His word. So what I'm asking you today to do is to step out on God's word to protect the unborn and the dignity of the human person by forming or helping others form a pro-life medical practice with an affiliated crisis pregnancy and sonogram center. In the words of John Paul II, America, your very future as a nation depends on your willingness to protect the right to life of the most defenseless in your society. For this reason, America, your deepest identity and truest character as a nation is revealed in the position you take toward the human person. The ultimate test of your greatness is the way you treat every human being, but especially the weakest and most defenseless ones. America's future, in fact, is in yours and our hands. So remember, you must look to God for your answer, not people. You must keep believing what God says. You must not be influenced by those who don't share your vision. And you must position yourself to receive. Jesus, I trust in you. May God bless you and guide you as you consider forming a pro-life practice. Thank you.